Today on Fit Tip Tuesday, we're going to do a little draping 101. I shared my mini dress form during a cool tool, and what I want to do today is show you how to create a sloper for your mini dress form. And actually, I've been thinking about it, and I want to use it to practice demoing and doing fit adjustments on mini pattern pieces because they're easier to work with. You waste less paper and fabric testing different ideas. Plus, it's also good for designing new things. And if you want to design new styles, you need a sloper to start out with. So I'm going to show you how to drape a basic front and back bodice with a bust dart and a waist dart, so you can use those pieces to practice on your mini dress form. The other thing I'm thinking about doing, and it's not going to be like next week, but I'm thinking about actually draping a front and back bodice on my ditto form, which is my shape, and then scaling it to fit my mini, and then I can make a cover for my mini and stuff it to create an actual mini me. So I've got that in the works in the back of my list as well. So today what I want to do is just show you the simple steps to draping a basic bodice. To start out with, you're going to need 2 pieces of muslin fabric that are large enough to cover, half of a front and half of a back of your dress form. You can also use these steps if you want to work on your full-size dress form, by the way. So I've got 2 pieces of muslin that are a good size. I also have 2 pieces of paper here on the ready, so after I do draping, I can show you how to create pattern pieces from those draped fabric pieces. I'm going to move those out of the way. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create guidelines to start the draping process. I'm going to use a little square grid ruler because I'm working with a mini half scale dress form. I don't need my larger rulers. And the cool thing about using a square or a regular quilting ruler is you can get your 90-degree angle and your vertical very easily. I'm going to start out by drawing some guidelines here. And basically what I want to do is I want to have a vertical line. So I'm going to just draw that. I'm going to draw a L-shaped guideline. This is going to be where I'm going to position the waist. So the next step is I want to measure on my dress form where the apex is. And I'm just going to measure from my waist to my apex, and I'm going to get 4 inches on here. I'm going to use the bottom of the tape along the waistline. So 4 inches up, and actually this works out perfect because my square ruler here is 4 inches. I'm just going to draw a second horizontal balance line like that. So this is going to be my full bust, and then I'm going to just have this go all the way up to the top of my fabric like this. All right, so this is going to be my center front is going to be here. This is going to be my full bust, and that's going to be my waist. And just to make a second version here, I have to make a mirror imaged version for the back because we're going to be working with half of the form. We're going to work on this side over here, and we're going to do this half and this back half. So you need to have a mirror image. This is going to be my center back. All right, so I've got my 2 fabric pieces set up and ready to go to drape. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my back and put that away for now, and we're going to set up, and I'm going to show you how to drape this little piece of muslin on a mini dress form. So we're going to start by positioning our muslin right on our center line here. So I'm lining up the center front with the center front seam line on my dress form here. And I'm just going to pin it so it's lining up with the bust and the waist and the center line. So I'm just going to put a pin here at the center, and then I'm going to stick a pin here at the center. Okay, and then I'm going to smooth the fabric up and pin it right at the top at the neckline at the center. Oops. My shorter pins here. I'm using the Ultra Grip Magic Pins from Taylor Seville. I'm using the shorter, like, I think they're 7/8 of an inch or 1 inch long pins, because then they won't bend. So now I've got my center front line pinned onto my dress form at its center front line. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my little snips, and I'm just going to trim off a little bit of this fabric here because I want to be able to see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to put a few clips along this neckline edge just so I can get that to lay nice and smooth along the neck of the dress form. Then we're going to start by smoothing out the horizontal balance line, and I'm going to pin it at the side seam over here. So let's just give that a nice pin to hold that there. I'm not smoothing it super snug. I'm gently wrapping it around the dress form without pulling it tight. So now I've got my horizontal balance line established. The next thing I'm going to do is deal with the shoulder. Okay, and after we do the shoulder, we're going to drop this down to create a bust dart, but I just wanted to hold it here for a minute. And I'm literally going to come up here and pin right at the shoulder. Now that I've got the shoulder pinned, I can get rid of a little bit of this fabric up here. Okay, just so I can see what's happening. Now that my tip of my shoulder is pinned, I'm going to relax this horizontal balance line, and I'm going to let this drop. Notice the horizontal balance line is now dipping down. That's okay. We're just going to smooth this along the armhole, and I'm going to put a few pins along my armhole back down to the side seam like this. Okay, so you can see now I've draped this top part of the bodice from the full bust to the shoulder and neckline. Now we have all of this extra here, and here's where you can decide what you want to do in terms of creating darts. I could capture this entire extra fabric in a single waist dart, but then that would be a huge dart. So I'm going to split it up, and I'm going to start by creating a bust dart. Okay, and again, notice I can decide where I want the bust dart to start and the angle I want it to lay in. So I'm just going to pinch up some fabric here to create, you know, a reasonable size bust dart. I want to split up this extra fabric I have to create a nice shape. So I've pinned in a dart here. Now I'm going to smooth it back, and you can see now that I've pinned that dart, I can also get rid of a little more of this fabric, again, to make it more manageable. All right, and so then what I'm going to do is just add a few more pins along my side seam, and you'll notice, I think you can even see the ridges of the side seam stitched into the dress form here. And notice my fabric is starting to buckle. So what I can do is I can create some, you know, some slashes down here, and this will allow the fabric to lay around curves a little bit nicer. All right, so I'm going to just stick a pin right here at the base of my waist. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create my second dart, my waist dart. Okay, and I'm going to just put a few pins in that. Both of these darts need to stop before you get to the apex. When we create our paper pattern, we will take care of that. But basically, I've got my darts here, and I'm going to say, all right, I want this one to stop this way, and I want this one to stop maybe here. Okay, because we want to create a cup shape there. So you can see now I've got my fabric smoothed really nicely around. The next step is I'm going to take my Sharpie marker, or you can use a ballpoint pen, and I'm literally going to draw in the shape of my neckline, and then I'm going to draw the start of the shoulder there, and I'm going to go over to my armhole, the tip of the shoulder, and I'm going to just make a bracket there. Notice I'm not drawing the entire line. I don't need to do that. I can finish that, you know, when I get onto the paper. Then we're going to just come down and follow the shape of the armhole. And I'm just going to dash that in. And again, I'm going to knock off, or I'm going to create an L-shaped guide right there. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create another L shape. And before I do that, I'm just going to clip in here. If your fabric isn't laying nice, give it a few more clips so you can get it to lay properly. And then I'm just going to do the bottom of my side seam is there. So notice I'm not filling that in. I could put a few dashes, but then I'll finish that up in paper. And so you can see now we've created the entire shape. And I'm just looking here. I think I went a little off track here, I think. All right, so see, I went in a little bit too deep there, so I fixed that. You know, just double check that your tracing is, you know, you're capturing the actual edges. All right, so that completes our front. So I'm going to take that off. I'm going to leave all the pins that are holding the darts though. All right, now let's do the back. So I'm going to repeat the same process in the back. I'm going to line up my center back edge with the seam. And you'll notice the back is going to be a little bit easier to work with because we don't have a bust in the back. So if you're really new to draping and you want to give it some practice just smoothing the fabric, start in the back. All right, so you can see I've got that all nice and organized, and I'm going to do the same thing I did in the front. I'm just going to trim a little fabric away so I can clip it. Oh, you need to be careful. You need to be careful because I literally clipped a little bit too much. So this is what not to do. See how I clipped a little bit too much? So to save this issue, I'm just gonna raise it up a little bit. I'll go to the top of the tape down here. I'm kind of glad that happened though, because it is very easy to clip off too much fabric. And just to make a note, I'm gonna put this down here. So we're going to still go to the bottom. I just moved that up so I have more fabric now. So be careful when you're removing fabric before you actually get everything situated, because you can trim off too much. All right, so now I'm going to pin it at my shoulder. Again, I'm just feeling for the seam. Okay, so I've got that pinned. Now that that's pinned, I can remove some of this fabric. Okay. Now here's what you're going to notice about the back. As I come around and smooth this across, I'm going to keep this horizontal balance line straight because we don't have any bust curve to fit here. So I'm just going to keep this horizontal balance line straight across here. And then I'm going to start pinning my side seam up at the top here. So I've got one pin at the base of the armhole. And again, I'm just going to get rid of some of this extra like that. Now I've got it centered back. I've got my neckline and I've got my shoulder. Let me just clip this a little bit deeper to get in there. See how clipping relaxes the shape? All right, and again, I can get rid of a little bit of this. If you start with a piece of fabric that's way too big, all that extra fabric can make it harder to create the shape you're trying to create. So I'm just trimming a little bit as I go, see, like this. All right, so the next thing is, now that I've got, this is horizontal balance line is straight, my shoulder is draped, I'm now going to create my waist dart. And then I can finish pinning my side seam. Okay, so then again, we're going to go ahead and clip some of this so it can bend to the curved shape like this. I'm going to put a second pin in here. All right, so now that I've got that whole thing pinned, and again, I'm going to clip in here a little bit to allow that to lay nice and flat and smooth. Now I'm going to mark around the edges of my back bodice that I've just draped. So starting at the neckline, and then over here to the L for the shoulder, and then we'll do a little L right here. Okay. And then again, I'm going to feel for that ridge for the back armhole to the side seam. And then here is the base of my side seam. All right, and that's it for the back. The back is really quick. So that's how we drape the front and back. Now what I'm going to do is take this off and let's make these into paper pattern pieces. All right, so before I take the pins out for the darts, I'm just going to mark my dart. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm literally going to draw a line along each pin like this. And then I'm just going to mark the tips of the darts. So I'm just making a little dot for the tip of the dart. And then I'm just marking where the pins are. And then I'm going to take those out. And you'll see what this looks like. And then let's do the back as well. I'm going to mark the base of this dart, the base of this dart, and the tip of the dart, which I lost my horizontal pin, but I want my back waist dart to stop about armhole level, so I'm just going to make a dot right there. All right, so now I've got these two fabric pieces. I'm going to use my ruler to connect the darts, the markings to create the darts. So there's my back. And then I can also use my ruler to create, you know, the finished edges here. All right, now you're going to notice that this looks a little suspect. This is not a nicely shaped back neckline. So we're going to true that up a little bit as we go. I think I went awry here. So I'm just going to make this I'm going to change the shape to that because I think I went a little bit high on the neck. But here's the thing, we're going to test it after we create the paper pattern pieces. So I just sort of made that a nicer looking back neckline. And then in the front, I'm going to connect the markings to create my darts. Okay, here's my shoulder. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace these onto paper. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my L shapes that I need. So let's do the front first. Actually, I can just do that and then go straight up. And I'll tell you, my sew tights, this magnetic board will really come in handy here because I can hold down the muslin right on my guidelines that I drew on the paper underneath. So this will keep it nice and stable for me while I'm working. All right, so I've got that situated. Now I'm going to use my tracing wheel and I'm literally going to trace along. This is a very aggressive tracing wheel, so I don't need the transfer paper to see my holes. So I'm just very carefully tracing along my Sharpie lines. Now remember, I don't need to do my center front and my waist edge because I drew those with the pen. All right, so now let's look and see what we have here. So I think you can even see the lines that my tracing wheel made. This is a vintage tracing wheel. I found this at the Novi Sewing Expo like 25 years ago. I love it. So if you add those 25 years to the age of this when I purchased it, this is probably a true antique at this point. All right, so I'm gonna darken in these lines now that I can see them. And I'm going to dash in my armhole here. I'm going to dash in my neckline. And then I'm going to draw my shoulder. And then, oh, let me do my bust. To get the outside edge of my dart, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the dart legs up to match. Like this. And then I'm going to use my tracing wheel to trace over that. And you can see that gives us the shape we need. So there is my completed front. Now to this, I want to add allowances. And because this is a mini Dressform sloper, I'm going to do 1/4 inch allowances. And then also I'm going to just use the short end of my ruler to mark the 1/4 inch around my armhole. So notice I'm just dashing very short dashes where my ruler lines up with that 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to do my shoulder. Okay, so there's my completed front sloper, and I'm going to put, all right, half scale, bodice, front. So I have that, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the back. All right, so now I have my 2 pattern pieces, and I'm looking at these things, and now I'm realizing that I probably should have checked to make sure they matched before I added seam allowances. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold back the paper along one of them, and let's just check this. Well, happy day. I almost match perfectly here. Okay, you can see that it's ever so slightly off. So just to use a different color, I just want to double check that here. So I'm just going to back that up just that little bit. Okay, so now that matches up. So this would actually be over just that little bit. It's really a Sharpie marker's width that it's off. But you can see, this is your goal. Your armhole should make a nice C shape, right? And then also notice my neckline has a nice shape front to back as well. But I did take some creative license on this back neckline. Remember when I marked the back neckline, it didn't look correct. So we do need to test this. And this is such a simple pattern. I'm going to pin the darts shut, pin the side seams, and just slip it on my half scale to see if it's working. I mean, alternatively, you could also make a fabric version, but I just want to make sure that back neckline is okay. And I can check that without wasting fabric. Okay, so now it would be harder to put a full-size paper bodice on a full-size dress form. It would be a little bit more fussy, but because this is half scale, I think we can get away with it. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm literally just going to pin these darts shut like this. So that's shut. I'm going to pin this dart shut as well. All right, and you can see it's creating a nice cup shape. Let me just pin this one shut. Then I'm going to, let's pin together the side seams. And again, I should have checked to make sure those are the same length, but pinning the paper together, you can see they are the same length. So check your side seams to make sure that they match before you cut out your paper. Oh, this is a little off. I'm going to just trim that little bit like there to make that match. All right, and then we're going to also pin together the shoulder like so. All right, now let's try this on our half scale form. I'm just going to slide it on. And what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to just put little clips like I did in the fabric along the neckline, because I want those to lay around the neckline. All right, now I'm going to stick this on and let's take a look at it. I want to look at this back neckline. Oops, let me just pull this down a little bit. Okay. So I did a pretty good job actually of fixing that back neckline. I think that's going to be okay. Now the back armhole, however, you can see that I came in too far here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little adjustment here to my paper. So I'm just going to bring this out ever so slightly so it's not on the metal armhole plate here. So I'm just going to correct that. Okay, now my front, I would say my front maybe just a little deeper here, just a little bit. Okay, so see how I corrected my armhole? And everything else I think is okay. My front neck is good. Okay, I just need to fine tune my armhole. All right, let's take this back off and look at it. All right, I'm just going to unpin it quickly so I can lay it flat and show you. All right, so you can see here, I'm just going to make these little changes to my armholes, and then I'm going to make a new master pattern for my half scale dress form. But you can see it was pretty close. It just needed a little fine tuning. Okay, so those are the steps to drape a basic bodice with a bust and waist dart. If you have any questions or comments, please post those below and I will help you. I see a mini sleeve in my future as well. I think I'm going to show you guys how to draft a sleeve using these mini measurements next week. I think that will be fun. Then I'll have a full set of bodice pieces to create new designs for on my mini dress form. If you're enjoying my content, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps me grow. And I just want to thank everybody for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you again soon.